Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
And here we are. It is Friday, the 9th of October, 2015. It is, I know I do bring up the weather on this podcast rather too often, but I'm sitting here looking at the most glorious sunshine that's coming over Battersea, South London, and the river. So it's a gorgeous day, and therefore a gorgeous day requires gorgeous people to join me. And Polly, welcome to the Friday Review.
Hello, happy Friday to you, Andrew. Lovely day here.
So welcome, Polly. Now, anybody who's followed any of the previous, whatever it is, 67 podcasts that we've done, will know that we occasionally have a little in-house podcast, which we call the Friday Review. It generally means we've run out of guests. And actually, I'm pretty grumpy about it today, because normally we've had a couple of occasions when a guest has pulled out or whatever, normally a day or two before. But this week, Polly, we've had two no-shows. And what I mean by two no-shows
is the worst. Two no-shows.
Two no-shows. One I kind of knew was struggling a bit, the guy that was due to come on today. The other no-show, let me tell you, on Wednesday, and that, can you hear that noise in the background, Polly? That noise is his name being removed from our LawyerFair Christmas card list. So I'm sitting here at whatever time it was the other day, really quite excited about this particular guest. I've done all my prep. I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs. No show, zero, not even a mention, not even Now, I don't know. I kind of just feel that that's bad form. What do you reckon?
It's very bad form, I think, when especially not even a response, really. They agree to do a podcast, but if something comes up, then...
Listen, we try our best. Not everybody loves us. We do our little daily podcast. We do a little bit of preparation. All we ask for is for you to just give us a call or send an email. He knows who he is. He's out there. I'm not going to name him. But can I tell you something else that crossed my mind? We have had three magnificent podcasts, and I'm going to go through them in a moment this week. Do you know what the key, the common factor about the podcast that happened and the podcast that didn't? Gender, Polly. Gender. Yep.
Okay. So
you get where I'm coming from.
Let you down this week.
Well, I think I am. I am. If I dare say this, Polly, I am probably feeling a bit like a woman at the moment. I am thinking, men, don't give them the time of the day. Don't give them the time of the day, Polly. Stick with women all the way. So we have had three magnificent.
Okay, I'll take your advice.
Yeah. Well, I suspect you knew that before I had to tell you, but So we've had three. So let's have a look at let's go positive. Let's look at the three magnificent podcasts we've had. Starting with Jules Sirkin. Now, Jules is a co-host down at the Business Bunker in Kent. Now, the Business Bunker, launched by a chap called Paul Andrews. It's just a brilliant example. If you want an example of brilliant community business radio show that just knits together local businesses. I mean, that's really all Paul and Jules do down there. They have a couple of guests on. It's every week. They talk about a couple of subjects, but essentially it's trying to knit together the community, the business community down there. It is a brilliant show. I love it. I really love it. And it's not just because they've invited me down twice and fed me with a lot of chocolate. But so Jules is a co-host with Paul, the fine Paul Andrews down there. And Jules also did a spin-out show. She is known for imbibing the occasional glass of Prosecco and fine piece of I don't know what I'm trying to grasp for, their food of some kind. So she spun out a program called Scoff Quaff. Okay, and she's been snapped up by Share Radio, who are a mean old outfit. They are a pretty well established outfit, Share Radio. And Jules did her first show with them last night. So I think she recorded it last night. It goes out this Saturday. So Scoff Quaff, Jules Sirkin, Share Radio. If you have the moment or the opportunity, do listen in, because she's a great lady, a great friend of ours, and she was on Monday. The second woman that was joining us, only women this week, was Juliet at 2to3days.com. Interesting marketplace, this one, Polly. This is a marketplace that puts together flexible employment opportunities with mums going back to work. And I just think it's brilliant.
Very interesting. I'll tell you what, it's a very big market as well.
It's a huge market, and there's so much latent talent that, historically, women generally had the option of full-time work or no work, didn't they? And 2to3days.com is one of those marketplaces which is saying, actually, no, we've got some flexible opportunities here. We've got some really talented women, and they're placing them together.
Actually, it's really great. And also the stats of how many kind of new mums that start startups is actually a great figure as well. I wouldn't know it off the top of my head, but it's huge. And I think this is a great concept at Mix as well. Kind of women who want to work and obviously raise their children as well. It's a really good concept.
Well, it does. I mean, my wife struggles hard. I mean, she went back to work. She's doing a pretty intensive job, and it's not easy. And she has to race back to pick up baby, because obviously I make no contribution whatsoever to family affairs. Although so she tells me that which is in a bad mood. But she does struggle with it occasionally, and it is a huge challenge and a huge stretch to combine the two. So that's a brilliant podcast. That's Juliet, who is up and running with that. And then finally, yesterday, I have to say, a subject of which I really have a lot of interest. We had a call with Alithia Kramer, who's based over in Wisconsin. Again, the joy of doing these podcasts, Polly, is you speak to people all over the place. It's really brilliant. And her raison d'etre is essentially trying to improve the mental conditioning of people in business. And I just think this is a huge area. And I think that we also kind of moved into something called imposter syndrome, which essentially is actually about really successful people who've really done very well, always thinking they're about to be found out, which is a fascinating subject.
Okay.
It's really interesting. I know a guy who is a really eminent lawyer, and I mean, seriously, high profile, does some big ticket stuff. And he once said to me that every day almost, he thinks he's going to get a hand on the shoulder saying, "You don't know what you're doing," because he kind of inside himself feels a little bit like that. So it's a really interesting subject. And I think one of the areas as well that she covers, I think startups, is a really interesting area, because there's a lot of chutzpah and smoke and mirrors out there. You might call it bullshit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so unkind. And I think a lot of kind of bullshit that goes around. And I think authenticity and authenticity. I think when you are authentic, I think it makes you feel more comfortable. It makes you don't need to put on such a pretense. And I just think in business,
yeah, that's very true.
When you find, I mean, you're in the fire, you're going out to these startup events and seeing a lot of this activity. But I just think when you find authenticity in business, you've really got to grab a hold of it with both hands. It's just such a pleasure to work with people who are authentic and not fluffing themselves up, frankly.
Oh, very true. Especially even when you are at these events, you can call out the kind of the bullshit, as you like to phrase it, from a moment. And I think when people are authentic with what they're saying and they're really passionate about what they're doing, the thing is, all startups are passionate. Well, from the startups that I've seen, but it's how authentic you are and how real you are to what you're trying to produce or what service you're trying to sell as such. That really kind of spreads you out from the rest. So I think it's very important.
I think so. I mean, listen, most people in startups are authentic. They're doing they're doing it because they have a passion for doing it. So it's not a kind of,
Yeah.
I think bullshit and chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, spreads across a lot of business, a lot of the spin that comes out of businesses. But authenticity is so crucial, and it's so lovely to deal with as well. I hoped and was anticipating my guest on Wednesday was going to be authentic, but sadly not. Sadly, he fizzled out. He fizzled out into another room somewhere. So that was the podcast we had yesterday. So a brilliant podcast. News, Polly. A little bit of news from the world of LawyerFair.
Ooh, love a bit of news.
Well, I appreciate this is a very self-indulgent podcast, and people may well have switched off long ago. But I hope your mum is still listening. And for your mum, I have an announcement. We have the imminent arrival of a commercial director.
Woohoo! I thought that there should have been a drum roll there before, Andrew.
I think the sound effects, your production qualities, Polly, are sadly lacking with these podcasts. But it's fair. In truth, I don't really give you the resource, do I, to do anything other than accompany me to these chats. But yes, so we've been working with Simon. We're going to officially announce it very soon. But it did raise the issue that is a really pressing one for startups, and recruitment it's so crucial and it's so difficult. Let me tell you, it is really difficult. To get the right fit, many quality people out there, many talented people, but getting the right fit, finding people who understand, I think, the trials and tribulations of a startup, because as you're experiencing it. It is an up and down. There's no day where you can predict safely what's going to happen.
No, definitely not. I mean, Say, as you're saying, yeah, I mean, there's so many different elements of a startup, especially when you get freshly involved and you're coming into a startup, which is, I mean, it's hard to say a startup's established as such, but a year and a half into kind of LawyerFair and learning the ropes, and there's so much to take on board, but it's also exciting at the same time. So, yeah, it's very exciting as well, recruiting new people. It's always great.
Well, I'm pleased you've used the word exciting a couple of times, because I'm always worried that you're about to be poached at one of these silicon drinkabout events. I kind of skulk around the edges of those events, just seeing who's chatting you up. Just I keep an eye on that. But because it's a great challenge. It's every startup entrepreneur will say the same thing. Getting the people right, getting the team right, is a great challenge. So we'll be announcing that very shortly. Very good to see Simon joining us. We also need a little bit of support from our very fine subscriber base and early adopters of LawyerFair, because we are in the Pitch 100, which is due to take place on October the 22nd. Am I correct with that, Polly?
22nd.
22nd. So we are at the Pitch 100 22nd, and I think we need votes, Polly. We need people to vote as it's a bit of an X Factor competition. We do need people to give us a bit of support. So if anybody out there is interested, how do they vote? They just go on the Pitch website.
Yeah, so if you just go on www.thepitch.co.uk and you can see the Pitch Shortlist 100, and it's all done in alphabetical order. So if you just hit LawyerFair, and then obviously you can vote for us.
Yeah, I think that's your mum. I think that's your mum calling, Polly. Says she's got a bit bored of the podcast.
Yes, what do you want to know about the Pitch 100?
That's the Pitch 100. There are obviously 99 and also 99 fine and noble startups on there, but you mustn't vote for them. It must only be a LawyerFair vote, clearly. And I think we're there. I think we've wrapped it up. I have managed in the last week or so to finally write an article, a blog relating to Larry David. I've been looking to connect Larry David to business for the last year of my life, and I finally wrote an article, Polly, which again I think hasn't had a huge amount of coverage in the national press, but I rather enjoy it.
No, Larry David hasn't retweeted it or anything just yet, but we're waiting for it.
He hasn't, but I enjoyed it. And I think the final thing we need to mention before we dash off for the international football break is your happiness about what's happening at Anfield. I mean, I never like to see anybody lose their job. Although £5 million might soften the blow for old Brendan, but you've got Jurgen Klopp.
Oh, I know, how exciting. I feel it was destiny when he came in 2014 and he loved Anfield, and now Klopp for Cop is finally a chant that we can start chanting at him.
Klopp for Cop. He's a great character. I'm looking forward to it very much. Polly, you've been a star in joining me, as always, pretty much at the last minute. So thank you so much, and I think that's the LawyerFair Daily Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.